But talking about those top two causes of death, yes, this is an obvious side effect of these injections. The myocarditis, the injury to the heart. But let's take a look at this video with this graphene oxide on the myocyte cells of the heart and see how frequencies hitting these graphene oxide particles, it changes the heart rate. They are remote controlled heart cells, just like we showed from the Rockefeller.edu website back in 2017, that they had remote control brain cells in the mice. Well, they've also done it on the heart cells. Okay, so what you'll be looking at and looking for here, you can see the places that are lit up. Those will be where the graphene oxide nanoparticles have attached to the myocytes of the heart tissue. And they are lit up because they are hit with a frequency. You'll see when I start the tape, they don't initially start lit up. And this will be a heart that is beating regularly at a steady rhythm. And then the instant the frequency hits, you'll see the graphene lights up and it changes the heart rate. It starts beating really fast. Hey, I'm sorry, you guys, about the barking dogs in the background. There's nothing I can do about it. I've got to get this work done. And I bought a new big guard dog a few months ago, and he's still getting to know the dog that I already have. So they're not fighting, they're just playing, you know how dogs do, but they're pretty loud. I closed the door upstairs, but you can still hear them. They got a big bark. So I'm very sorry about that. I'm not a professional with some studio or anything. I'm just doing the best I can. Please forgive the background noise. Okay, so here's what it looks like normally, a normal heart rate. Okay, so here's the normal heart rate. Hits it and see how it speeds up. Don't. And it goes back to normal. Play it one more time. See, it's just a normal heartbeat. Frequency hits it, the graphene lights up, and it starts beating really fast. So I'm not even saying that every single person that we've seen, like on the sports teams or whatever, that falls over has been hit by a frequency and is a targeted individual. It's hard to say because with the advent of the iPhone, and we've just seen such an increase in these sort of ailments with all the Wi-Fi around us and everything. I know that Parable of the Vineyard channel, he was talking about how he used to play those iPhone games and he would lay back in bed and he would have his iPhone on his chest and he started having heart arrhythmias from just resting his iPhone on his chest. This was years ago before the rollout of these most recent injections. So, and I know I had heart arrhythmia and so many people I know, they started doing SVT surgeries on teenagers that I know, again, several years ago. This is unheard of. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the frequencies that are already around us. Is it going to be incredibly amplified now that they roll out this new spectrum of microwaves? And will that be weaponized? For sure, it'll be weaponized. But does that mean there won't be any casualties that are like unintended? Not that they don't count every single one of them as a bonus. And why I'm going to show you they are targeted. Absolutely. There are people who are dropping. Now, are these random people or special people? How do they pick who the targeted individuals are? Used to, the targeted individual beta test programs, that they did pick out who they were going to terrorize. But it seems now that there's been an algorithm loosed that does it randomly. They just randomly pick phones because they want the genocide to be not obvious to people. They want us to think like we have previously. Oh, the top two causes of death in the US are heart disease and cancer. So they think most people will just continue that narrative. Even when they see, 50 sports stars drop right in front of them on the field, they're still like, oh, it happens. And here's those couple of clips that have come out recently. Most of you have already seen them, but in the context of what we just talked about here, I'll show them. The gal at the nail salon that got hit with the frequency pulse out of her own phone, and then the guy on the bike that the CCTV, the surveillance cameras accidentally picked up getting hit with the frequency. Watch this, right here on her arm, you can see it flash. See it right there? She has the butt, my cursor might have been in the way, but she has this black shirt on. So watch, she flashes, the phone flashes her, and then it activates it. I'll keep my cursor out of the way this time, but it's right there on her sleeve. Keep an eye and you'll see the flash. There it is. Now watch. She starts to like, where am I? And then it's over. So I'm not going to play it again. You can pause it and rewind it and see, you'll see the flash came out of her phone. And then these are the nanotechnology, what they're calling nano routers that have been found in the VAX files, of course. And then this is just one of the many, the PubMed.gov documents on exactly that, these nano routers, nano networks, antennas in the terahertz band and stuff. This is, here's the number at PubMed, 301-55262, if you want to look it up. But it's basically exactly what Bill Gates's patent talks about, 060606, about these nano-sized sensors in the body and all of these healthcare applications and stuff. And then it has down here, it has all of the diagrams. I'll get up there, showing that they link to the phone, just like she had in her hand when that happened, and that these nano sensors will be in the body. See if we can find. And this is where they get those images when these self-assemble. They have these bow tie shaped antennas. And it's up to you what you think about this. You can go and look up the literature on these different nano antennas and routers and the hertz, the frequencies that they operate in, and all of that. It takes a lot of research. Some of what people are putting out are salt crystals. Some are not. They simply are not. And here's another recent one that has made the rounds. It's gone viral, so most of you have already seen it, but it's another example of this that people are talking about, these 5G towers and stuff, sending out directed energy weapons that are specific. They are specifically targeted to people who have this nano. So watch right across here. You'll see on this, see it? And he falls right over. We'll go back and do it again. But right there, you'll see the disturbance. And this is a security camera. So you can see the disturbance come straight through, aimed right at him, and he drops like a, see it? It's like heat on the pavement, it's invisible, but you can see the disturbance. Maybe look over here at the trees on the other side past him. It's hard to detect on the road since it's all one color, the squiggles and the frequency atmosphere. There it goes. So, you be the judge. Is that just a coincidence? Or, is it not actually in the picture, but like an EMP affects the devices, or like a UFO encounter will shut down everybody's devices? Is this something that would not be visible in the atmosphere, but is causing interference, frequency interference on the camera itself? Either way, there's no denying that the exact instance that that frequency hits, he drops like a fly. And another interesting thing that Rob mentioned was the immortality portion of this. People don't talk a lot about that. They don't want to talk about that. But there's a very specific reason that they chose these model organisms to genetically engineer these injections, the immortality portion of the Hydra. And in the Human 2.0 video that I did a few years back, we talked about all the big tech companies who are involved in this immortality research. Like this says it well, a mix of money, medicine, technology, and hubris. They believe they're on the brink of achieving immortality because we can isolate genes now and they can pick out the traits that they want and genetically engineer themselves. It's Gattaca. But out of the 500 million flesh vessels that they want to allow to survive this biological apocalypse that they have unleashed, they don't want us all for the same thing. They, like Brave New World, they want a slave race class. They want the breakaway civilization that there's them and there's us. But then among us down in the slave race, some of us, they just want as workers. literal manual labor slaves. So they want us, our brains shut off. I mean, they've already got us tuned down to what, 20%, 25% of our brain is all that we use now. And they want some of us as avatars so that they can put us on like they put on a suit, similar to the surrogate movies where the people didn't actually go out and do anything. They just sent their surrogates, their avatars out to do it so they could do all sorts of death defying any adventure they wanted, anything. They didn't have to worry because that was just their avatar. And to an extent we already have this going on, especially in the celebrity class, like we've shown with the celebrity lookalikes and this Lebensborn breeding program that the Nazis did, how it had carried out through history. That's in the Transagenda and Breeding Program video series. Anyway, how they've carried out that Lebensborn breeding program, they've carried it forward, only now very highly sophisticated. And that's why we have this celebrity phenomenon, right? That they all look exactly alike, the beautiful people. And you'll see an old one and a young one alive at the same time, but you can totally tell they are at the very least from the same gene pool, but almost certainly some of them are they're clones. They're in vitro created, human beings.
Because a lot of fans happen to think that Victoria could be sisters with the Vampire Diaries actress Nina Dobrev. These two have super similar shaped faces and style their hair in similar ways. And this resemblance isn't just a recent development. Victoria and Nina even look alike in their childhood photos. Yeah, guess which celeb is which here? Now, let's throw a third celeb in the mix, model Melanie Iglesias. And yes, these ladies know all about their resemblance, and they're only too happy to strike a pose with each other. If their goal was to look alike, let's just say all three of them are victorious, and not just Victoria.
So it's more advanced than this. The surrogates that are wearing these, you can see they're like computerized under there. They're talking about cyborgs, like actually taking over our flesh bodies. And again, I believe that that goes on in the ruling class already. They talk about it openly. I've played, tons of clips of them saying it, whether it's Nicki Minaj or Beyonce or whatever. They all say that when they get ready to step out on stage and be worshipped, something enters them and begins controlling their behavior. And, they usually become more sexual, more outgoing, all of that.
I raised my hands up, and it was kind of the first time I felt something else come into me. And I knew that was going to be my coming out night. Sasha is my alter ego.
Roman is a crazy boy who lives in me, and he says the things that I don't want to say.
But this is how those entities get their worship. They get us to worship them, literally, very literally. They put on these avatars and they step out and people raise their hands in worship, and we've gone through all this with multiple concerts and, in several of the other videos, but you get the point. And I'm just saying what they say out of their own mouths. They say that something takes them over at that point, that something enters them and begins controlling their behavior. Okay, there's so much more that I want to say about the avatars and the surrogates and the correlations between this movie and what we see with the biological avatars that they seem to be making out of us by hijacking our bodies with this invasion of the body snatchers technology. There's a ton of clips that I put together in files for the Avatar series, but this is getting really long. I want to start keeping these videos now that I've been kicked off of YouTube. I want to start, and my channel's still up. I don't know what that means. I got the termination notice. I showed you guys. I can't post on it or anything, but it's still up. Praise God. Anyway, since I'm posting more on like Bitchute and the alternative platforms, uploading these 4-hour videos, it's too much. Bitchute takes all night and then it'll time out by the time it finally uploads and it won't actually process. So I'm going to have to start cutting these 3 and 4 hour videos down as low as I can. So the best I can do, I'm hoping to keep this one around 2.5 hours or so. So I'm going to cut out all this avatar stuff and show all the clips in a part 2 to this video. There's some really interesting stuff like the clip in the Surrogates movie where he and his wife are fighting and she leaves by taking off her interface, and then her avatar just like goes blank and sits there like a mannequin, and it looks precisely like the glitches, we call them, that we see all around us in the celebrity class, like the Al Roker clip, that when she says the word Holy Spirit, and his avatar goes dead, he just freezes, like the entity inside him like took off and fled when she said Holy Spirit, and left his avatar just standing there frozen like a robot.
Exactly. Junior high.
Yes, like they say in Catholic school, leave room for the Holy Ghost. Anyway, there is a lot of memories today, actually. It's a big day in music history.
35 years ago today, Elvis Presley passed away, the king of rock and roll. And as Mark Cohn says in his great song, Walking in Memphis, there's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the jungle room.
And then like a clip at the end where he takes down the whole surrogate system, and when the signal stops beaming over all of the avatars and they just fall to the ground, it reminds me of all of those cases that we've seen, whether it's Wendy Williams or Katy Perry on stage in the middle of a concert. It's almost like their Wi-Fi goes out or something and they just boom, drop. Or whether it's Hillary Clinton glitching up and they have to like physically put her in the car, or Lady Gaga glitching up, and being put in the car. We see this stuff all the time. So I've got a whole file full of those that I would have normally put right here in the video and would keep talking about it, but this is getting really long, so I'll do another video, full-length video, where I put all that stuff together with also the files about the immortal stuff. I'm not going to be able to get to this immortal cell line of Henrietta Lacks in this portion either, but it relates to this avatar thing because in my humble opinion, we're being told the story backwards. We're told that she died of this cancer, but we're told it was this special fast growing cancer and that they kept this immortal cell line and all of that, and she perished. I think it's the opposite. I think that she was experimented on, and the thing that was growing in her that killed her, they kept. So she also had syphilis, and we know with the Tuskegee syphilis experiments where they experimented on humans, just like they're doing now, they gave them all of these injections and that type of thing. And just like the Tuskegee Airmen, how they didn't treat them for the illness that it caused, they wanted to see the progression of it. They wanted to see how it affected their brains. They wanted to see how it grew in their body. And they didn't care about saving their lives. And I think the same thing happened to her, that she died, but they kept what was important to them, this organism, this immortal cell line that was a quote cancer. And they have used that cell line, that immortal cell line, in the development of all of these other vaccines and other medical pharmaceutical things that they've had going on. So I want to talk about that, which again ties back into this concept that this didn't just start right now. Somebody gave them this technology, this immortality technology, and throughout history there have been people like Count Saint Germain who show up with these immortal traits, right? Or even alien races, this Aryan race, these alien races, like this clip on the screen of, they call him Valiant Thor, the visitor at the Pentagon, that this so-called alien did show up, and he had all of this immortality or anti-aging technology, and he was, the reason that he knew every language on earth and all of this stuff, and he was like, over 500 years old already, even though he looked like he was 30, and all of those stories. But since I'm going to leave this section out now, I'm not going to put the clips in. If you're looking for something interesting to watch along those lines, you can go over to Paranormal Roundtable, and they have it's episode 69, and it's just called Immortals ? And these guys are great. They're Christians, Josh, Nelly, they're just fantastic. Their whole family is. It's like a family show. Anyway, This is really interesting. This is one of the more interesting ones I've seen on Immortals, because most people do just regurgitate the couple of cases I just told you and then the more famous cases. But in his podcast, he talks about personal encounters, people that he literally knows and works with who have had these encounters with regular people, immortals, who are trying to hide it. Like they worked with them when they were like 18 years old at a club or whatever, and then they bump into them 50 years later in Vegas, and they're still the same guy. Like they're still look like they're 18 years old. It's the same person, only they haven't aged a bit. And I am totally butchering the actual facts of the case. What I just said there is not at all what the case actually is. I mean, it's something like that. It's stories like that. I'm sure I got the ages wrong and the places wrong, but you get my point. They are stories about everyday people bumping into these quote immortals. They just move from like town to town, and stories of like women who have married them and then their husbands leave because they stop aging and the women keep aging, but they leave them massive amounts of money that comes from who knows where, and notes saying that, explaining the situation. Just stories like, the "they are among us" stories. I'll also save the Max Spears portions for the avatar or the second part to this video. But the important parts, takeaways that I want to mention now are when he talks about being used as an avatar or a super soldier and going through all of this child experimentation when he was little, that it happened at Stanford University. And he claims that Stanford University and the doctors that he was dropped off there with that were doing these experiments, that this was a continuation of what had begun at Tavistock again. And I think that's interesting because of the Stanford prison experiments, that they did many of these types of experiments that sort of pertain to what we're going through today. What we talked about earlier in the video about, will the police and the military, will they continue to like club people and beat people and drag little children off and, papers, please, just absolutely complete brutality. And that's what was proven in the Stanford prison experiments. I believe these were beta tests. And that's precisely what they learned from these experiments, that normal people made to feel like they were superior or given power over others would in fact abuse others. The Milgram experiments, the Milgram obedience experiments also play into what we're living through today. I believe these were beta tests for their social engineering programs. And they found out that yes, a large percentage of people will obey authority no matter what. Even like in the experiment, he was told that these shocks would kill the man, and yet he still pressed the button for the guy in the lab coat. And all he had to be shown that the guy was a person of authority was they dressed up an actor in a lab coat with a clipboard. But because he believed this was someone, an authority figure, he continued to torture the guy, even though he could hear him from the other room screaming in pain. And he was hesitant. He didn't want to do it. You could tell, but the authority figure kept telling him, yes, do it. And so he did it. The authority figure told him that he would take responsibility. And if anything happened to the guy, if he died or whatever. So like this gentleman here in the experiment, he continued to do it. And it was all an act. It was an actor screaming in the back and stuff. But it proved that, I mean, humans would kill another person if someone that they thought was an authority figure told them that it was okay, that it was the right thing to do. And why would anybody need to do a study like that if you could get like a normal person who absolutely doesn't want to hurt anybody to kill somebody or hurt them because the authority figures tell them to? I mean, it's for just such a time as this. So I will put all those clips from the Stanford prison experiment and the Milford experiment in this second part to it. But for right now, I wanted to mention that the new Rasmussen poll, that 29% of Dems support taking your kids if you refuse to take the injections. They think it's okay to take your children from you. That's, again, you give these people, this is, they tested this stuff out, they war gamed this. If you make these people feel superior to their neighbors, they absolutely will abuse them. They're like, yes, take their kids away. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in for it. Let's do it. Let's harm them. That's what happened in Nazi Germany, right? If you read the Corey Ten Boom story or listen to any of her interviews when she was alive and what she went through, how her neighbors turned her in, actually posed as if they needed help because they knew she took in refugees. And so they came asking for help. And when she helped them, they went to the police and turned her in. And her dad died in the concentration camps, and her sister died in the concentration camps. They took them all. So regular citizens do turn on their neighbors, and this is what we're seeing right now. They've wargamed all this out. So 29% of Dems polled in this new Rasmussen poll say that, yeah, they would come take our kids. They would take our children from us if we don't take the genetic augmentation injections. 59% say that they support us being put on house arrest if we refuse to take the genetic augmentation. 48% of the Dems say that we should be put in a cage, put humans in a cage. Talk about the Stanford prison experiment. If we refuse to let these billionaires inject us with whatever they want, because they're authority figures, right? They have a lab coat on, or they're a billionaire. They're an authority figure. So it doesn't matter if they kill you. And they know, these people know that people are dying from this. They don't know the truth, the extent of it. But I've watched a million videos. I've watched people who are laying in the hospital bed paralyzed from their neck down say afterwards, but I'm not saying don't take the injections. You know, it's obedience to authority. So yeah, I thought this poll was interesting in light of the Milgram experiments and the Stanford prison experiments, but all of the details on that will be in the next video. This one with Max Spears, all of this, again, just like the Donald Marshall stuff, sounded so far out there that I disregarded it, that I couldn't do anything with it for a long time. But now I feel safe to talk about it, at least whether you believe it or not, the concepts are valid. And he had said that when he was used as an avatar, they would make him drink a solution, some sort of solution, and he would pass out. And the entity that they wanted to enter him, that he said did not cleave and couldn't stay in him, was these ancient demons. He said it was a hybrid creature, a minotaur creature. So I think that's interesting what we were just talking about, avatars and these, you know, being literal bodies for demons, that he was talking all these years ago while he was still alive. He was talking about it being a minotaur. Now that's, you know, that's far-fetched, but that is precisely what we see in the archaeological record. Another quick takeaways from some of his interviews along the lines of what we're talking about right here was that he said when he woke up from these experiments that there would be uniformed men standing on the side of his bed, and they were wearing Nazi uniforms. So this goes along with what we're saying about World War II never really ended. This regime continued on. And if you don't want to wait till part 2, you can bounce over to my Antarctica series. There's like 4 videos on Antarctica and all the nations, you know, what's going on out there. And Steve Coyle's book, The Empire Beneath the Ice, and all of that. That has a lot of information on the continuation of this. Also, Max Spears talked about in there, not just about the hive mind and the blood types and this Nazi World War II research that continued, but he talked about this virus that was given to them by this quote alien race, which we know are, you know, the Nephilim, the demon spawn, humanoid hybrid demon spawn that they made, the Nephilim. But he says that aliens gave them this quote virus, which is especially interesting because, like we just showed, these graphics that they're showing us of a virus look exactly like programmable matter. And when he died, there was black goo, something exited his mouth. It's especially interesting that he talks both about this black matter and about this quote alien virus, in light of what we discussed earlier, that yeah, the mainstream shows us these graphics of this virus that looks exactly like programmable matter. And just like programmable matter has these electromagnetic sensors stuck around it so that it can assemble the way the artificial intelligence wants it to shapeshift and assemble. And again, that looks exactly like the magnetic proteins that we see in all of the literature. I mean, you can go and just look it up. What is a magnetogenetic protein? Look it up, and you'll see exactly what they're showing us, these proteins stuck all around the sphere, whether that's a cell or whatever their, molecular nanotechnology they're doing, those proteins, there is such a thing as magnetogenetic proteins. So I know they tell us, oh, it's just a spike protein that you're producing and it's part of this flu and, bullshit. It's okay to believe exactly what we see with our eyes, and it's okay to believe science, regardless of what the authority figures are telling us. And that's precisely what we see in programmable matter. There's a reason why their graphics of a quote virus look exactly the same as programmable matter. There's a reason why Max Spears and all of these whistleblowers are talking about both a virus and this black goo, programmable matter, because it's the same thing. This is all nanotechnology. It has always been nanotechnology. It is not alive. This is not part of nature. This is not part of God's creation. This is all from the enemy. Thule Island, or Thule Island, I'm going to call it Thule. Thule Island has major ties to both the black goo phenomenon, the programmable matter phenomenon, and the Thule Society of the Nazis, right? So we've talked about before during the Falkland Wars, and I put the interviews with soldiers who were there and saw it firsthand, that they went into these islands and removed massive amounts of this black goo. And it appears that's what this whole operation was about. That's why it was only a 10-week, quote, undeclared war between Argentina and the United Kingdom, because we know that many of the Nazi higher-ups escaped to Argentina. So they were protecting something on these islands, and there was a 10-week exercise, which was an undeclared war between Argentina and the United Kingdom in the 1980s. And according to the interview, which I'll put clips of in the second part, the guy says who was there that, yeah, they were retrieving stuff from caves. It was hidden in caves, and it was black goo. It was programmable matter. And, some people say, like Max Spears, this is something that came from these ancient races. Other people say this is stuff that the Nazis made themselves and were storing in these underground locations out in the ocean on these secret islands and stuff. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it's interesting to discuss, especially in light of what we're talking about here. The Vril Society and the Thule Society created the Nazi Party. It wasn't the other way around. They were the occult practicing societies, secret societies that were summoning these demons and channeling these demons, getting all of these diagrams, blueprints that they were supposedly channeling from demons or quote aliens and stuff like that. And they were the very societies that created the Nazi Party. And now here we are living through this where they're literally spraying nanoparticles, self-assembling AI, like sentient, intelligent, smart, quote, viruses. I mean, this is some creepy stuff. And again, back to Donald Marshall's claim about this parasite, this Vril parasite. And yeah, it was the Vril Society. And although we still have our fair share of secret societies functioning, in our country and all around the world, a lot of it's just done openly now. They do their recruiting openly. They're proud of it. They've externalized the hierarchy. They believe they're running the world. They are running the world, but they're open about it. It's not a secret anymore. So I want to play this quick clip of Klaus Schwab talking about infiltrating and taking over the governments of the world prior to this.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I mean, with the president, who is a young global leader.
So there he was talking about, the top tier leaders that they have in place, whether it's presidents or prime ministers, and then their entire cabinets also being full of these World Economic Forum people that they have recruited and trained. And you can see here's young leaders of the World Economic Forum. You've got all parties, Dan Crenshaw, Tulsi Gabbard. These are people who, we would say are more on the right path. But look, he's saying out of his own mouth that we have groomed these people from youth, whether it's sports stars or tech leaders. We've always said these are all figureheads that, from the Rothschilds, the Soros, and to all of our leaders of all industries. That's how fascism works. That's how the military industrial complex, they take over the industries as well as the governments of the whole world. This is the World Economic Forum. This is the new world order. This is the world government prophesied in the book of Revelation. And it's not even a secret. That's the sad part, is how is there such a communication gap? I mean, their propaganda and their psychological operations have been so effective that this isn't hidden. This is right in front of our faces. This is open knowledge that the communist spies groomed and financed our leaders, as well as these Nazis who have set up governments, who have continued their work right to the present moment of coming out and saying, okay, the entire world must take genetic augmentation, or you don't work. You no jab, no job. It's out in the open, and yet you show people this to their face. Well, I mean, most of them won't even watch it. They're like, stop showing me that. Their slides are so, they're triggers. That's what MK Ultra calls it. The CIA used to call it slides. They build slides in. These are triggers that they can't hear. They shut down and they cannot hear. They cannot see it, even if you put it directly in front of their face. And then, now we have the entire woke culture using the MK Ultra words, triggered. They're triggered. Don't tell me the truth. That triggers me. I'm triggered. And it's like, that's the exact language of MK Ultra. But the point is that these experiments never ended. This agenda from World War II and the Superman, the Uberman, and the God Man, and all of that, it never ended. This, you can just go and read about it and see that this is exactly what we're going through right now, and that it 100% dovetails into the Antichrist agenda. In their writings, they say it is to overthrow God, it is to replace the concept of Christianity, it is to transcend. The German prefix Uber can have the connotations of superiority, obviously, and transcendence, which is the exact same terminology that we see in our modern day Nazis or our modern day technocracy, right? Transcendent man, the singularity. They say Ray Kurzweil, we've done tons of videos on him showing in his own words. That's what he believes. When asked, does God exist? He says, not yet. Not that God created us, that we are created beings, but that he's going to create God. Oh, I mean, I've heard of egos before, but come on, man. But the point is that Uber man, that's exactly what it means, transcendent man. So these Nazis, these modern day Nazis, use the same terminology as they always have in their propaganda. Nothing has changed. It's not hidden from us. It's hidden from our minds, but it's right in front of our faces.
Now, Mr. Schwab likes to throw around a lot of buzzwords to convince the masses that this agenda is for the betterment of humanity. Words like sustainability and inclusivity and equality for all. But in his 2016 book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, he's a lot more candid about the elitist plan for world domination. Let's skim through some excerpts from this literary masterpiece, shall we? The tools of the Fourth Industrial Revolution enable new forms of surveillance and other means of control that run counter to healthy open societies. Oh, well, that sounds helpful. Public crime is likely to decrease due to the convergence of sensors, cameras, AI, and facial recognition software. These technologies can intrude into the hitherto private space of our minds, reading our thoughts and influencing our behavior. Sounds a lot like mind control, but that's a conspiracy, so it can't be. As capabilities in this area improve, the temptation for law enforcement agencies and courts to use techniques to determine the likelihood of criminal activity, assess guilt, or even possibly retrieve memories directly from people's brains will increase. Even crossing a national border might one day involve a detailed brain scan to assess an individual's security risk. And last but definitely not least, the future will challenge our understanding of what it means to be human from both a biological and a social standpoint. Better call up Sarah Connor. Now, unless you've been microdosing sedatives for the past 8 months, I'm sure you've realized by now that the CV-19 pandemic was manufactured to kickstart this agenda.
Transhumanism is the continuation of this master race cult. Like I said, they use the same terminology. Uberman is the transcendent man. Ray Kurzweil's documentary about AI and this nano dust, this nanotechnology that Julian Assange calls evil dust, is literally called transcendent man. And then we have transcendence, which is the Hollywood style propaganda for people who can only digest entertainment. They can't think through a seminar or a documentary, but they'll sit and watch entertainment. They can still get it into them with the same exact terminology. They're going to transcend technologically. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. I cannot believe I'm already at 2.5 hours. I still have so many clips I want to show you guys. But before I go, I've got to show this one more clip about, this is our brother Eugene, and he's had a prophetic dream, I believe, from the Lord. And I really wanted to include this because it's such an important warning. I've noticed recently, and especially for the last couple of years, really, all of this talk about the emergency broadcast system, and people are interpreting it in lots of different ways, and I believe that it will be used in lots of different ways. But the one thing that is common is that we know that the tech companies are really, really concerned about the emergency broadcast system, and they've been updating all the iOS systems. They're forcefully now, they will force you to install the update. Then we have different intelligence agencies and federal government agencies contacting all of the television stations and radio stations and stuff, sending out this correspondence, telling them they must do their emergency broadcast system tests. And I know everybody has their different ideas about why that would be, but the one idea that I haven't heard is what I want to say right now after I show his prophetic dream and vision. So here is his YouTube channel, Eugene Sneed. I will put a link to it down below in the description box.
And it's a very strange dream. And it's very surreal. And if you honestly have ever seen the movie The Cell with John Cusack in it, you're going to relate to what this dream is about. And although I can honestly say there was no direct link that I could tell in this dream that has to pertain to the V, but there was an overall sensation and feeling that the V was involved, if you catch my meaning, in somehow, shape, fashion, or form. But the dream starts out, it's daytime, just like it is now. You know, it's a partly cloudy, partly sunny day, and I'm in my car, I am in my hometown, and I am driving down the street, and there's a few other cars, in front of me and some behind me, and it's not on a highway, but it's basically on a, like you would see, like a main street downtown. And there were some other cars passing me in the opposite direction. Okay. Well, I come up on a stoplight and I make a stop, and I have apparently the radio on in the car. Although I don't hear any music or any talking coming out of the radio, I come up on this stoplight, and as I stop, I hear this very weird signal come over the radio. It's like a loud screeching. It's like it's like, if you ever remember what dial-up used to sound like, well, take that and amplify it about 100 times, and then you'll get the idea of this type of signal that's coming through the radio. And I also got the sensation that it was coming through on the phone. I mean, it was coming through pretty much any electronic device that was in your possession. And I immediately covered my ears. I mean, it was so loud. I covered my ears. And I started to try to also block out the sound by humming or singing, like you would go, la 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 la, something like that. And I got the overall sensation that this isn't good. There's something going on. There's something not right. And as I continued to do so, I got a thump from behind, like a car ran into me. And as I looked into the rearview mirror, I could see the driver of the other car. They had just, it appeared to, they had just like slumped over in the car. And it wasn't due to the crash, because the crash wasn't, it was just a slight thump, just a little, like a little tap. But they appeared to have slumped over in the car, like the signal may have done something to them. And as I look around to these other cars, I see the exact same results. I see this one person get out of the car, and they just, they're holding their head, and they just fall over. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. This is weird. Something's going on. So I exited my vehicle, still covering my ears. And as I started to look around even more, I saw other cars start careening off, of the road, and people slumped over, and just, it's almost like people were dying of this signal. And as I started to look around, these people who apparently had fallen over and died got back up, and they were just like zombies. I mean, they literally were zombies. It was like you were sitting here watching, the TV show The Walking Dead.
So here's about a 10-second clip from that movie. He's talking about that Stephen King book that was made into a movie with John Cusack, Cell, where they use the cell phones to send out the frequency. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Could they use the emergency broadcast system to broadcast this frequency to everybody simultaneously? I know I've heard multiple prophetic dreams and visions just like his that said that exact thing, that they were in their backyard, and it was startled, and this loud noise started coming out of their phone. So I think that's interesting. And right after that, I'll juxtapose a clip of a vaccine injury of somebody, we already showed the clip in the nail salon of them using the phone, but this is a different lady that she can't figure out why every time she reaches for her phone, it causes her to go back into a seizure.
Need more money. So yeah, she's touching the phone. She puts it down, and just about immediately, her symptoms stop. Have you felt?
This next clip is from Doug over at Fellowship of the Martyrs. And you know what? He's one of the ones, I'll have to do a video about that in the next update. He's one of the ones who has one of these sanctuary city places of refuge that he has set up. And they are really set up. He has the big warehouse, everything that we're doing, except he's over in Liberty, Missouri. So you might want to check him out, Fellowship of the Martyrs. Hey, and while we are on that topic real quick, we moved the fundraiser over to Give, Send, Go, which is the Christian fundraising platform, because GoFundMe already took down our fundraiser once and I got a notice from them again. So it's still up presently, but I would like to change all the links over to this Christian fundraising platform because we know that GoFundMe loves to delete accounts with no notice. And for whatever reason, you can see we've only had 4 donations in the last month anyway. We're like way behind. Don't get me wrong, I am so incredibly grateful for everybody who has contributed. And, you know, I've shown you the updates. We've come so far. I'm just saying that, you know, we can't finish it. We can't finish it. We can't even, we don't have a building. Like, we've got to keep going. And we have also had a handful of donations through PayPal. So, and a couple of you have been very faithful and have upped your donations in PayPal the last few months. Don't think I don't notice. And I want to tell you, know who you are, all of you who have donated to this. I'm so appreciative. And, you know, I pray that God rewards you, that it's a jewel in your crown when we get to heaven. I hope that we can pull this off and finish our mission because, you know, there's a lot more going on. As scary and horrible as all this we're talking about is, you know, there are other things that are going to be happening too. The Bible says there are going to be the natural disasters. You know, I didn't get even halfway through this video, so we were going to talk about the visions of the war actually breaking out, the physical war with bombs and everything. And you guys know that part of our mission in this is to get all of this stuff transferred over onto DVDs and other valuable interviews that aren't even from my, you know, my channel, but all of the doctors' interviews. We've been transferring all of this over off of the internet because, like we saw in Kazakhstan and in Myanmar, when the civil war broke out, one of the first things that went down was the internet. They shut the internet down so that people couldn't network and communicate with each other. And so that was kind of the guise that we've been working under. But talking about what we've been talking about here today in this video, there may be a time soon that we want to voluntarily put our devices down. You know what I'm saying? That we are going to have to go back to the old way, the way I did it, you know, in the late 90s, where we exchanged information on VHS tapes. We passed it around. You had to mail order stuff, things like that. We didn't have cell phones and we didn't have internet. So there, it wasn't an option. And a lot of people can't imagine ever going back to that lifestyle. But, you know, look at what we're showing you here today about these devices. And there might come a time even before the internet gets shut off by the government that we want to voluntarily step away from some of this technology and go back to a simpler time. And I want to be ready for that because I know what God called me to do. And whether we can see it coming or not, He said there is going to be a time that this stuff on DVDs and hard copies of the books are going to be just invaluable. So anyway, here's that dream from Doug over at Fellowship of the Martyrs. It's called Dream About Zombies, and it was put up 6 years ago.
Typically, I dream all the time. Most of the time, it's just goofy stuff. But when it's from the Lord, it typically resonates differently, and it continues. If I wake up, wrestle around, think about it, go back to sleep, it keeps going. And this one ran all night long, and it was all about zombies. And it wasn't like any zombie movie I've ever seen. And I feel like it was from the Lord, and I don't know if it was a statement about the state of things or future prophecy or just a sort of a poetic how it looks through his eyes kind of a thing. I'm not sure. It started with, I think FBI, some kind of plainclothes government, non-police officer types in a headquarters building investigating this strange murder. And then like one of the agents flips out and is acting crazy and tries to get out of the building and is trying to escape all the other guys. And they know something's wrong with him, and they're trying to stop him and figure out what it is. They think maybe he's got infected by whatever. And he is like super strong, super fast. And this whole building full of special agents is trying to stop him, and nobody can really stop him. And they're shooting him, and it's not stopping him. And tasing him, and it's not stopping him, and whatever. And at some point, he gets trapped. Like his leg is caught between something, and he takes a knife out and hacks his own leg off and doesn't seem to feel pain, doesn't seem to slow him down, just kind of keeps on moving. They get him cornered on a balcony 8 or 10 stories off the ground, and all these guys got guns on him, and you can see him like thinking about just jumping off the balcony because he doesn't feel pain and what's, you know, like this obsession to get away. And then that episode kind of ends. Now, these are not face rotten off, white-eyed, walking around slowly zombies. These are regular people looking things, but they're not feeling pain, and they're real strong and real fast, and coordinating, intelligent, plotting, planning to take over, or whatever. I got that it was about transhumanism, that it was about some, you know, next step in evolution and all of this stuff. The next scene, we're in a rave. I'm not in the dream at all. It's not. I don't typically have dreams where I'm being tortured. Used to be, I'd have nightmares where things are coming at me. That pretty much doesn't happen anymore. In faith and in the Lord, if something comes at me in a dream, it just gets crushed and fairly dramatically. So I'm not anywhere in this dream. I'm not being chased by zombies. I'm just observing these different scenarios. And like I said, I don't know what to do with this. So I'm telling you because I feel like I'm supposed to make a video about it. And there's some stuff to learn from it, but I'm not saying what the application is or what exactly. I'm going to leave it to you to interpret as the Lord leads. Anyway, we're in another scene. I'm looking at another scene. I'm not in the scene where it's a rave in a big barn. There's a DJ playing dance music, people with little shiny glow sticks. Everybody's partying and drinking and, hip hopping and whatever. And one of the guys is real drunk. And the music is saying, we're the new rulers, we're sons of the king, we have the power, we're going to eliminate all of you, we're the next generation, stuff like that. And this drunk guy goes over to the DJ table and grabs the microphone, and even though the music has these lyrics in them, it's not like anybody's really paying attention and everybody's kind of interpreting it, whatever. But this guy's like, yeah, we're going to eliminate you all, and we're the new generation, and we got the power, and we're going to whatever. And so he's just stating the lyrics that are hidden in the song, but he's giving himself away, and it's a bad thing. And instantly, after 3 or 4 lines of that, the music stops, and 90% of the people, give or take, immediately stop, face him like one unit, and start walking toward him with this look of, you idiot, what have you done, disdain on their face. Nobody yells at him or rips him down off the DJ thing or whatever, but like 90% of them are pissed, irritated, whatever, that he has outed them somehow. And so he anyway, so like 90% of them immediately stop, like line up in formation right in front of him, angrily looking at him, and then turn and all head out the doors. If they had been drinking, they showed no sign of being drunk. But the minute before, they're all partying and acting like they're all whatever. And then, bam, dead cold sober, perfect alignment, like one body, move out the door and are angry with him. And I don't recall if they take him out with them or whatever. But just like that, party's over. We're out of here. There was some other stuff to the dream, but in between, like I would wake up wrestling with this and asking the Lord questions like, what is the deal? Because there was nobody, it was clear in the dream. You know how sometimes in a dream you just know like stuff, but it wasn't exactly in the dream, but you just know that that's how it works in the dream. There was nobody biting somebody else to infect them.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this here, and we can pick up where we left off in the part 2. But I want to reiterate in closing that this is indeed a continuous empire. And you can see from the pictures on the screen that these are not the people that were hung in Nuremberg. These people went on to run the world. I mean, this is the head of the EU, a Nazi, NATO's chief of staff, the Secretary General of the United Nations. So, I mean, let's just look at some of these and see where they've set up their headquarters now. How about NATO? Seen anything about NATO in the news lately? Oh yeah, the big controversial headline, the Pentagon surrenders Norfolk Naval Base to NATO. Regardless of what you think about that, NATO did set up its headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. Just exactly like the United Nations set up their headquarters in New York. So this is our coast. These are our port cities. Just like every state in our union has their own capital with their own Capitol building, and then us as a nation, the entire United States of America, we have a capital, Washington, D.C., with our own Capitol building. The one world government, the United Nations, has set up their headquarters, their capital, on our soil. Now we have NATO in Norfolk, Virginia, and of course we have the United Nations in New York. And that's nothing new. They stuck their foreign flags in our soil a long time ago. And how do you defend them? How do you say that NATO, whose chief of staff is a literal Nazi, pictured right here with Hitler, a literal Nazi as NATO's chief of staff, how do you say that NATO isn't corrupt? But the World Health Organization, the WHO, is the United Nations. That's their World Health Organization arm of the United Nations. And they're the ones orchestrating this whole thing. And big tech saying openly they will remove anything that anybody says that disagrees with the World Health Organization. This is here. And by here, I don't just mean at this era in time, I mean here. They're here. They've set up their capital. The world government has set up their headquarters, their capital, on our soil. And like we talked about here in the Titan Point series, these big megalithic windowless stone skyscrapers that have been built in these major cities all across the United States, housing this supercomputer, this quantum computer AI superbrain. And I guess that's where we will pick up in the next video, is about the bombs. All of these visions, the one that I had, the Lord showed me about massive explosions like nuclear bombs going off in cities counterclockwise all the way around me from center of the United States here, and then going all the way back to Henry Groover and all of the old prophecies about the same thing, which he said he saw communications towers being taken down. And we all for years thought, especially through like the 2000s, those were probably cell phone towers when they said take out communications. But it very well could have been these cities housing the brain of this thing. We always assumed when we saw the nuclear attack on the United States of America that that was a terrible thing and it would have had to have been the enemy. But what if what we're seeing with this nanotechnology being, quote, switched on, what if they have to take out these good guys, have to take out these major cities that house the brain of this thing that will be controlling people? Or if the cities are overrun, like World War Z. I don't think any of us can be sure at this point, but these are things to consider as we interpret prophecy. The prophecies don't fail, but our interpretation of them does fail. And we need to take another look at some of these in the context of this information that's coming out. Well, time will tell, but I'm pretty sure none of you will be surprised. Like, I will not be surprised. We know exactly what time it is. But there's going to be a lot of people out there after the shock and awe. They're going to be confused, shaken up, turning on one another. They're going to have to relocate. We need to be ready. This is our time to rise and shine. You guys be brave, be safe. I'll talk to you again as soon as I possibly can. And if there's anybody out there who wants to help with our new project, our refugee project, the Truth Library, and that sort of thing, or if you just want to support this work that I do here with trying to get this information out, we can sure use it right now. All right. I love you guys. I'll see you soon. I'll see you soon. God bless you and your families.